What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Master Crafted. We have been taking a little bit of time. We got to, finally work through all of the new mission cards. We've taken a look at the new maps, and we're excited to get some 40k in. But before we can play some 40k, we got to build some lists. Isn't that right, Phil?
We do. And y'all have been asking us, hitting us up in the Discord and in the YouTube comment section, asking us opinions on lists and things that you think we need to do. And it's very daunting right now at the beginning of edition, looking at all these dispositions and saying, Phil, Lane, I don't even know where to start. Like all of these dispositions, they're looking for different things. But Lane and I, we have dove deep. We have found the 4 things that we believe across every disposition you have to have. Like you have to have, because there are some certain things in every single one of these dispositions that it asks each player to do no matter what. And you have to be prepared to do those things. So let's just get right into it. Lane, what are our 4 things that we are expecting our players to be prepared to put in their lists?
So up first, we have contest units that are going to go and contest your opponent's natural, whether they're killing stuff off there, they're just high OC, maybe they've got some good battle shock shenanigans, right? We're talking about units that can go deny some primary. Up next, we have objective units. These are going to go do actions. Do some scoring. Those are very prevalent still going to have to do the things. Rook units that are durable and kind of tough. This may not be something that everybody has access to, but we do think if you can take some things that are a little bit more durable, it's going to be useful, especially into certain matchups. And lastly, expansion units that can help you hold your natural and secure your own scoring, right? If we're talking about you needing to go contest your opponent's natural, guess what? Your opponent probably should be trying to contest yours. So we're going to try to build in things that are good at doing that. So up first, contest units. Phil, what are we looking at when we're talking about those?
Well, I just want to point out some similarities that we already discussed already. In every single one of these dispositions, you are asked, and your opponent is asked, to control objectives outside of your deployment zone. Your home objective no longer matters. So it does, in the sense that there's certain missions that will give you benefit if you control your opponent's home. There are certain ones that they'll give you benefit if you control more objectives. But I'm talking about the broad sense of all of these dispositions. All of them ask you to control objectives outside of your deployment zone, which means that is one of the most consistent ways we have to affect our opponent's primary. Because if you've watched any of our videos up to this point, Lane and I have talked about it at length, you are going to see higher scoring games because there are points aplenty. Secondaries can be stored. People are not going to be missing those nearly as much, and they're going to be scoring them more optimally, as in they're going to be scoring higher and higher points on their secondary totals. So you're going to see more and more games in the 90s, in the 80s, with both players in the 90s, both players in the 80s. And that's going to be a little getting used to. So we said contest units because we genuinely believe, and we said it in 10th, and it even matters more now in 11th edition, you have to go deny your opponents either natural or central objective, whatever objective they're on, because that is the main way we can deny our opponent's primary. Now, there's different ways you can deny your opponent's primary, because you may be asking, Phil, Lane, I'm running Chow Gunline. I don't have combat units that can go in and like fight somebody off an objective. I'd be like, well, you're partially right. Like you are correct in the sense that you cannot go fight them in that way, but you do have units with good OC. You have high mobility units that can get within potentially a 15 or 12-inch hidden and then shoot an opponent off an objective. But you have to have those plans, because at the end of the day, if you're not able to deny your opponent's primary, you're going to kill everything, but you're just not going to score. And, the reason this came up is Lane and I were discussing about how everyone's going to have to play into Purge. And some people are going to build Purge in a way that wipes out their opponent, but unfortunately doesn't score any points. So if you want to have close games, if you want to potentially win games, you have to find different ways to contest. So Lane, I talked about gun lines. We already talked about it. Yes, it's very obvious with combat units, but what are the actual tools that a player should have built into their list that they could potentially use to contest our opponent's natural?
Yeah, so I think some of the biggest things that we are looking at is either you need the ability to be a good deep strike 6 unit potentially and just land on it. Units like Inceptors that can just come in, shoot the crap out of something and be like, you know what, that was a good trade, right? I don't feel bad about that. Units that are a good rapid ingress threat that have high mobility as well. Maybe you don't have to rapid ingress them, but in general, it doesn't hurt, right? Units of JPIs to drop in a pocket that they aren't covering, or just so happen to be able to rapid ingress right behind the center objective, and then make an advance and charge over there are all going to be very, very good things. You also still could even the lowly guardsman keeping 10 off the board to be like, well, if you're not careful, I'll just wrap it in these idiots off the board edge and walk onto your natural if you're not covering these shooting lanes. Like there's still many, many ways that actually has quite a bit of value. And we talked, Phil talked a little bit about this, right? It's not something you have to be doing every single turn, but the more you can do it, the more comfortable you are going to feel at trying to maintain your lead, right? And at all of this stuff too, like we're looking at maybe like 1,000 points roughly of what this stuff is trying to cover. Your core units, like you still have, this isn't everything in your list, right? They're all going to work together in your whole list to win you the game. But like we're looking at like, hey, these are some of the just like the basic concepts we're really looking at, and some of these are obviously going to overlap with each other. You can fill multiple roles, so it's making sure that you are taking at least some of these things and you're putting them in there with thought, because this is a lot of what it takes to build a game plan. Is what are my units that are going to go deny, right? Up next, like what are my units that are going to do actions? What do I feel comfortable with? What is the cheapest things that I can put in here, that can go, or maybe they aren't so cheap. Maybe they've gone up in points like a combi lieutenant and they're still fucking worth it, right? Because they're just still such a pain in the ass to deal with, right? Lone op is still amazing, right? Being able to just awkwardly be kind of out in some of these no man land areas that are just hard enough to reach without poking out is actually really, really valuable, right? So like I think we've covered contest units, right? We went over this a lot in 10th edition, right? You need a contest to natural. It's changed a lot. It's a lot harder to stage and get there on some of these maps. So you're going to have to really evaluate that as you're looking at the maps you have available to you in your disposition, and plan accordingly. But it's still there, right? Like that's still something you have to do. And up next, objective units, these aren't different either, right? These are things that just efficiently score you points and aren't that much of a loss if you have to lose them.
Yeah, so like at the end of the day, I'll say it for this one because this is the one it's probably most important for, but it matters for the contest is we're giving you, hey, you probably need multiple units that can do this, but depending on your disposition, you may need more contest units. You may need more objective units because you're saying, okay, in something like disposition or priority assets or recon, like you're gonna be doing more actions, but everyone is gonna need some because at the end of the day, we will still have secondaries we need to complete. And as Lane said before, points are plenty. And some of these games, at least in the games that I've run so far, I get to 45 VP for primary very quickly, or I'm at that point where I'm like knocking on the door pretty quick, and that's a good position to be in. But on the flip side, it means that between me and my opponent, the secondaries are going to make a lot of the difference. So you can't be dropping points anywhere. So like objective units, when I'm evaluating objective units, especially depending on my disposition, like I'm looking at it as in, okay, well, I would also like to potentially control the objective with these action units that are potentially having to go out on objectives for a lot of these. So I want a decent amount of OC. I'm not asking for a 40 OC guardsman 20 brick. Like that's not necessarily what I'm looking for when I'm talking about action units, but I am talking about in that, like, I'm looking for that like 6 range, right? Because 5 is like right at the number of the stupid little 5-mans that can sit on an objective and maybe they are able to stop me from getting the things I need to do. Or it's like 2 OC bodies. Maybe they're able to string 2 on there because they didn't put the full squad on because they've like strung the other ones behind the terrain because they want to hide it. Like, okay, like 5 to 6 is like the sweet spot number that I'm looking for, that I need a good action unit to get to potentially. That way I can go after things like flipping an objective, doing an action, making sure that I survive, right? For some of these where like Overwatch is still a thing, flamers are still a thing. Like there is still good Overwatch out there, even with the fact that you can no longer reroll the hit roll for any Overwatches, which is nice for me, not nice for some armies, but it's the only way that you're going to be able to flip these objectives. So when I'm evaluating action units, I put a lot of stock in mobility. I put a lot of stock in OC.
Yeah, all of this stuff is very, very valuable. And like we said, right, some of these can be both, right? Sometimes you're going to be able to accomplish multiple things with units, and it'll help you being able to do that, because especially like playing Disruption, where your missions are so insanely varied, right? You're going to have to be finding the best multi-use units in your codex to really make it feel good. But yeah, I think, another easy one covered. We'll move on to the next one, Rook units. Units that are tough and durable. This is something not everybody really has access to, right? I don't know Drukhari have the most tough units to really put out there and stuff. And this one is definitely like it's not going to be in everyone's game plan, but it's still something that I think is just so incredibly valuable in this new edition is that it's so easy for people to do a lot of damage once you poke your head out. But having a unit that you can have weather the storm a little bit and just kind of whether you're rapid ingressing it and it has to stand in the open because there's sometimes that's going to be the only way for you to accomplish some of the things you need to positionally on these boards is you're gonna have to put it out there and say, well, it's gonna still eat something, and I have to be okay with that, right? But in general, like as a guard player, right, I'm always gonna be taking Bulgrin to go put on the middle at some point because I know how hard it's gonna be for an opponent to remove those if they can't get within the 15 and I'm positioned correctly, right? Like that's still if I position correctly up to 6 OC, maybe 12 OC if I'm in Grizzled. That's very hard to deal with. You have to get close to me. If you don't do something about it, it's still going to be their next turn, right? Things that just really can take a beating and require a disproportionate response from your opponent can just be so valuable in an edition where once you're within 15, there's just so much lethality and your saves don't mean shit generally, right? Your armor saves. If people have AP, it's not hard to kill your units generally. So units that have 2 up, 4 up are incredibly valuable. You know, big durable things. If I'm a demons player, I'm still probably slamming the Guo button half of the time in most of my lists, just because it's going to force such a large response from my opponents. And more than anything, it's going to be when I run into a purge player, it gives me something to say, this is the first thing you're going to have to kill. It's the first thing I'm putting out there potentially, or maybe the second, whatever. But it's going to be the thing that is going to go out early, and it's just going to require a huge response from them, unless they are fine with it sitting there. And it varies, obviously from opponent to opponent. But I just think tough, durable units are so insanely important. And maybe I was talking to our good buddy Matt who plays Death Guard, and he was running his all drones list, which is just literally a stat check across the board. Like per wound, the points on that build are insanely good. Like almost all T9, 3 up, 5 up. Like it's very, very good. And I think that's going to be one of the things that actively is such a value in 11th is having the ability to put something out there or put many things out there and being like, you literally just can't kill enough of this. A Green Tide, like another great example, like orcs just being suddenly salad and here's my whole army. Like that play style, I think it has so much value by having durability and the ability to weather the storm if you do have to, whether you're full sending it or you just have to try to get the game going with a unit that can take a beating and require a disproportionate response.
I think that last part is the most important part because people may say like Drukhari, oh well, yes, Drukhari doesn't necessarily have that super durable unit like a 10 man of Deathwing Terminators, right? You don't have that. But what you do have is like Talos. What you do have is like an Incubi brick. Or, I used to say like your court used to be in that realm. And what's the name of the beasts that went to legend?
The Beast Pack.
The Beast Pack, like that is now gone. I think I've opened up some sore wounds for Drukhari players, but there are tools that aren't inherently just because you're durable. So if you have access to -1 to hit, -1 to wound, -1 damage, anything that causes your opponent to put out an additional asset that you can then take advantage of. So like let's take a Talos, for example. Those things are actually incredibly durable, especially in that like middling melee versus like not real shooting assets kind of game. Like your opponent has to put something real to kill a Talos. Those things are actually incredibly durable. But if your opponent puts out too many things or a really important asset, well, you have to be able to pick whatever comes out up in return. The problem is Drukhari does that in spades. Their scourges are incredible. Like they will always benefit on the trade because you poke out to kill the scourge or you poke out to kill the Talos, and then the scourge come out, kill you in return, they pop back behind the wall. So they didn't have to give up a scourge. You had to give up a really good asset or two. And none of the scourge are dead. So overall, it's very, very interesting. There are different types of Rook units. So like, Lane obviously is in love with his Bulgrin. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a shrine in his house to all the guardsmen that his Bulgrin have saved. Some other examples just to give you some like general idea. Aberrants for GCR call, Terminators for Space Marines. I actually think Tau in general their new crisis suit bricks are going to be very interesting in the sense that they are durable enough and fast enough that they're going to be in decent positions throughout the game. But really, the main thing is ghost kills for Tau. Like those things are usually horrendous to deal with. They have blanks, they have -1 to hit. Like they've caused me fits in times, and they have access to lone op as well, which is like those are the Rook units. It's just not traditional. So if Tau has it and Drukhari have it, everyone has it. It's just you have to decide what the job of that unit is, which is kind of what we're talking about during all of this is like, what is the job of this unit? For Lane, his Bullrun going out to the central objective, absolutely, that completely makes sense. For Space Marines and their big brick of Terminators, it's rapid ingressing away, walking up, making a charge, and then flipping an objective and kind of sitting on it like Space Wolves or something like that because wouldn't be surprised if we saw a big 10-man of Space Wolf Terminators running around and some of these combination detachments. And the same thing with quite a few others. Catans are still going to be relevant. They're still going to be around because they're going to do the same thing. They're going to sit on some of these objectives, be -1 to hit damage, -1 to hit, and they're going to cause some really, really big problems for people, especially if for Purge players specifically, you are extra motivated to kill that thing. So as Lane was talking about, like they're gonna overexpose, potentially kill that stuff. You just have to be prepared to punish whatever it is they expose to kill it. So it's kind of like that chess piece game of like, I'm baiting you with this super high durable unit, but I need you to give me enough that I could then kill it in return to make all this worth it for me on my side.
Yeah. Yeah, and still like, Wraith bricks still insanely good value. The Oricon 20 warrior brick, you might not be able to do the shenanigans you used to, but how much firepower it takes to actively eat that and get within 15 if you have just like kind of pushed up to the middle and been like, well, this is a ton of OC. And for you to deny me holding this is either going to take more units to just have OC on there, or you're actually going to have to kill all 20 of these wounds with who knows how many shenanigans of regeneration going on at the same time. So yeah, it's a big deal. I think those units are just going to have a lot of value for most people. And then last but not least, expansion units. So the final part of your core, having a plan for you holding your natural, because if your opponent's watching our videos, they're going to be coming for it, as they should. So we're also going to tell you to try to counter it, because this is the most predictable way within these missions that across the board you can try to find ways to dock their points, and if you can prevent them from doing it, keep your own points. And that's how you make a differential, and it's consistency. So Phil, how are we going to approach expansion? There's many ways.
Yeah, this is really hard, actually. This is probably one of the hardest in the newest edition to actually come to terms with what your army is capable of doing. So, first and foremost, we'll talk about the things that are going to translate over from 10th edition. One of those is just screening, right? Like preventing your opponent from rapid ingressing within range that they could then move on and get onto your objective. Can every army do that? No, absolutely not. Not every army has the capabilities on some of these layouts to push beyond the objective to make sure that our opponent cannot get to it. Especially with pile and consolidate changing, especially with overrun being a thing. Like it's gonna be harder to protect that objective. But some armies are very capable of doing it and pushing well beyond the screen. Good OC, right? Like that's going to be something that we're going to talk about all the time. But the problem is, good OC doesn't necessarily mean that your natural objective is safe because all of these objectives are now on terrain. We can no longer be behind the profile on an objective and be safe and just be like, oh, well, I got 10 OC. The only way you're going to get on here is like, you have to fly over me and fight me on it. And it's just not going to work, right? Like, you're not going to fight me enough to get the OC off here. And I'm going to still be able to maintain this objective. That's not a guarantee anymore because if, let's say, it's an infantry unit that is hidden and you're at 15 inches, great. That still means you can get shot off it because you're touching the terrain. So now you are visible. So good OC is there. The hidden mechanic is there, and this is where we'll transfer into some of the new things for 11th edition. The hidden mechanic is probably one of the most important. If you can get down to a 12-inch hidden mechanic, as in like it's lone op, they have to get within 12 to see you and shoot you. That is beneficial. That means you stand a better chance of controlling your natural more consistently, especially into some armies, right? Which is good. The other thing that you need to have in the back pocket, I genuinely believe, is for the majority of armies, you should have the capabilities, or you should be able to plan for, hey, 2 CP, heroic within 6, and go and take your objective back for an army like Guard or Gene Stealer Cult or Necrons or somebody who's just going to like pile onto an objective and put enough OC on there, they're going to flip it, but they're not going to charge you with it, right? Eldar can do it, Space Marines can do it, like any army can realistically do it. You just have to be prepared. So like for me specifically, if my expansion holder objective is a combat unit, I am prepared with the 2 CP for the heroic every time because I have to. And that's like pretty important. Is sticky still as important? Yes, it's still important, especially like sticky on death is good, especially in some of these matchups. It's very nice. If you get shot off it, you can still control that natural. It's very good. And then there's a lot of reactionary stuff. So I think reactionary just in general has a lot of value because of the size of these profiles. Because if I can sticky an objective and then get off it and then say, okay, well, if you touch this objective in any way, I can reactionary back onto the objective, then still control it and you won't flip sticky, right? So like I think reactionary moves with the differences in profiles are incredibly important if it means like us holding our natural.
Yeah, there's also a lot to be said too about where some of these walls are on objectives. If your opponent is just tagging onto the edge, again, another time where rapid ingressing 10 guardsmen that can just walk in on the board edge, mostly hidden behind a wall to just put more OC on your natural, like that's not a waste of points at all, or CP. I think, and one of the tricks Phil used a lot of 10th edition was rapid ingressing, a fight's first Watchmaster unit with his Death Watch to then heroic later in the turn, right? Like things like that are still going to be very valuable. Then there's the entire just I'm gonna go so far past having to do any of this on my natural. You can play something like Mon Tao and be like, you know what? My priority is I'm just gonna go kill all of their trash on this side of the board. Sure, I'm gonna lose my stuff, but they literally can't come over here now. They don't have anything now that actively threatens me, right? Like you can plan it that way. As a guard player, I will gladly keep throwing a screen, even though it's harder with 9-inch coherency. I can still space myself to where it's going to be very, very hard for them to not, they can kill the unit, sure, but piling onto my objective to take it is going to be insanely hard for them, and I think that's one of the things that, you really have to be looking at. Some armies, it's going to be, oh shit, well, I just have very good Overwatch, right? If I'm playing against the right opponent, I can just go, well, you know what, I've got 10d6 flamers, and I have enough OC that you're just going to get roasted, right? And you might even have some reroll wounds once they stand on the objective. That's always lovely. But yeah, this is the thing, or these are the things that we think are really, really worth taking an active look at as you're going through your list building, because there's a definitive change between 10th and 11th, and it's not so easy. It's not such a straightforward game when it comes to really being able to interact with how your opponent scores. So much autonomy is now given to your opponent that we really need to be focusing on the ways that we can affect it. And I think this is one of the ways to look at that, on how can you score still well, and then things like the Rook units, and it's going to take some time to get used to playing against Purge, but you go, how do I position and how do I make them come fight the worst possible things they could potentially fight, right? Like I think there's a ton of value in that, because now it's Purge at any time, but the terms of Purge have changed dramatically.
Yeah, you always have to be prepared for Purge, and Purge will always be prepared for you.
Yeah, unless you're playing 30, T-Suns Terminators, and then I don't know. We'll see. That's but that's, again, right? Is that what you're doing? We don't know, but we're trying to give you all the best, just like basic ideas that hopefully will translate. No matter what army you're playing, you can kind of get a sense of, why am I putting this in my list? Because you need to know what it is doing for it to be effective, and for you to win games. That's a lot of what it's going to come down to. And we felt like this would be a really good episode to do before we deep dive all the missions and all these things, because as we're talking about them, we want to be able to go, well, and this is where I would stage, a contest unit that's going to go storm my opponent's natural, right? Like we want to kind of give you all the context before we kind of dive into that, because it's going to matter. It's going to be important. So hopefully this will help as y'all are preparing for your first games of 11th edition, or, your next games. I don't know. I'm sure some of you have fucking 50 games already. So, you're doing us proud. I still have none, but I'm living vicariously through everybody I talk to, and it's good though. 11 seems to be having some fun games. Phil, any other thoughts before we wrap this up about 11?
Yeah, don't get too hung up on the structure that we're giving y'all for types of units. Like, as Lane said multiple times, we'll just wrap up with this. Like, final thoughts. Units can do multiple jobs, and that's okay. You need to be prepared to, and you need to be willing to lose those units because it's going to happen. Like, because everything's touching objectives, it is going to be more lethal. You're going to lose units faster than normally you would because of the fact that, like, previously you could do actions from behind profiles and stuff like that. Majority of actions, you're touching actual pieces of terrain, which is going to mean that you are going to be more shootable, and the numbers can change. So I kind of like hinted at it throughout the objective one, but your level of numbers of the level of contest units versus objective units versus Rook units versus like expansion units, like all those things can change based on your dispositions, your army, the detachment that you're running, and then your personal play style. And this all comes down to what is the play style that one you enjoy and you feel like you're good at. Because at the end of the day, if you're playing 40k and you're having a miserable time and you're playing an army that you don't enjoy and you're playing a style of army that you don't enjoy, you're not going to have fun playing 40k. So you can find solutions to playing 40k in the way that you want to and also be successful on the board. And I think 11th edition, especially 11th edition, has put us all in the driving seat of that. You have so many dispositions and you have so many different combinations of detachments, way more than we were used to in 10th and 9th edition. So you have control, and we'll see what happens when the MFM drops and we get all our points and, we're ready, to hit the ground running. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully this was just a nice little quick breakdown of how we kind of see list building going to 11th edition.
Yeah, we're super excited. Points will hopefully be coming out this week before the actual drop itself, so we can start cooking. And so, we figured we'd give you the cookbook for yourself to, be ready and know what you should be looking at. As Phil said, this is going to vary tremendously by faction, by disposition, by detachment, and what your game plan is. But it's the core set of principles that we really want to impart to you that should help you kind of have a good idea of how you're going to start building lists at 11th edition. And yeah, last but not least, thank you everybody for tuning in. We've had great growth over this last week, and we're so appreciative of everybody who's liked, subscribed, commented, joined the Discord. If you haven't done those things, what the fuck are you doing? Hit those buttons, god damn it. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to more 11th edition content, and we can't wait to keep throwing shit your way, and hope y'all enjoy it. And as always, do not forget that victory isn't given, it is forged, and it is forged right here at Mastercrafted. We will see you all next time.
See you guys.